Welcome to the Horseshoe, everyone. Well, outside the Horseshoe at least, the Monday after. That's going to be a weekly thing for us. Tim and I are going to come back down here, go around the city maybe, to find different spots on campus, talk about what happened the Saturday before on the Monday after the Saturday that happened. Tim?
Monday afternoon quarterback.
Well, we're not going to steal anybody's sayings because I think that's been used quite a few times.
No, that's not a saying. Have you ever heard anybody say Monday afternoon quarterback?
Oh, no, but... So, Tim, first of all, the parking lot looks like it's pretty clean. When I walked out of this place Sunday morning about 2 o'clock, this place was looked like a dumpster.
It was like that before the game. I had to walk through it to get to the press box. We did the radio show downtown. They moved it downtown because of the storms that were going through, which, by the way, didn't go through between like 3 and 10. But that's another story. But you're right. I mean, they cleaned this place up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and you know, I don't like all the trash that's left, but the amount of trash that was out here showed how big and crazy the tailgate scene was. So we'll give Ohio State fans a little bit of credit for that. But use the trash cans, guys; they're everywhere. Anyways,
they were full. But go ahead. That's another story.
Let's go. Enough trash talk, as we should call it. Let's talk about Saturday. Ohio State 21, number 2 Ohio State 21, number 5 Notre Dame 10. Tim, just a couple days removed, biggest takeaway from just what you saw in the Horseshoe on Saturday night from this Ohio State team, whether that's offensively, defense, special teams, or from the coaching staff.
Yeah, well, as I'm writing about for later Monday or early Tuesday, competitive stamina were the 2 words that came out of Ryan Day's mouth almost more than anything else in the last 8.5 months since the 2021 season was over with that ridiculous comeback win over Utah in the Rose Bowl. But the competitive stamina, which means not only do you get in the best shape possible, but then you get in the best shape possible to be able to finish games, not the rummy-dummy games. And this would classify Ohio State versus Arkansas State, first time ever, as a little bit of a rummy-dummy game based on the fact Ohio State being a 45-point favorite as we speak right now. But the big games that matter, opening with number 5 Notre Dame, what are you going to be? How are you going to be playing in that second half, especially in that fourth quarter? I thought that was what really stood out, was Ohio State took over the game in the last 20 minutes. And 11 points isn't a rout except when it's 21-10. Then you've more than doubled your opponent's score. That's sort of like quasi a rout, agreed? And I thought Ohio State played this game to the end, just like Ryan Day wanted, shut out Notre Dame in the second half, outscored them 14-0. That's how you win games.
Yeah, and so now that you say it like that, it is a rout as an airplane flies over. Of course, we're trying to film the video.
This is like being at Flushing Meadows during the U.S. Open.
But anyways,
tennis.
It kind of is a little bit of a rout when you put it like that. When you talk about how, Ohio State held them to 10 points, scored 21. That's double the points. If it was 40-20 or 60-30, that's a rout. 21-10 is a rout, especially with what Ohio State's defense did in the second half. My biggest takeaway from this game is almost a little bit of pride from a lot of people around the country not panicking over this Ohio State offense. I think people kind of understood the nature of this game. It was a ground and pound game. Ohio State didn't need the firepower offensively to get it done. They just decided, I mean, really, if we want to think about it from a different way, Notre Dame said, hey, we're going to muck this game up. We're only going to give you 4 second half possessions.
We're going to shorten it.
And you know what Ohio State said? Go ahead.
Yeah.
And that you know what? That's enough, because
I'm not sure Ohio State gave that kind of approval. It was more like tacit approval.
Well,
if that's what you want to,
you like to go.
If that's the way you want to play, take your best shot. I think was more of it.
Yeah, but you like to take that literally, and I say Ohio State says go ahead, as in, okay, if this is what you want to do, we're going to go 95 yards and take your throat and take your windpipe away, because that's exactly what Ohio State did. It was 14-10.
We can't run. Yeah. They're saying to them, can't run. Watch this.
Yeah.
Can't. C.J. Stroud's having an off night. Watch this. Yeah. That's exactly what they did in that 95-yard drive.
And so Ohio State said, okay, Notre Dame, fine. If this is what you really want to do, if this is actually how you want to play, this is not your, last year's Ohio State team. This is a newfound toughness Ohio State team. This is a team that has that competitive stamina, competitive excellence, as Ryan Day likes to say. That's my biggest takeaway. And the offense, for all of its flaws on Saturday, proved a lot to a lot of people. And that's why I'm not concerned about it at all, because if Ohio State, if Ohio State would have come out and thrown the ball all over and scored 45 points and had 2.3 yards a carry, we would be standing here talking about how nothing has changed in this offense whatsoever. But the fact that we had to see Ohio State establish the run, Mayan Williams and Trayvon Henderson get those tough yards, Ohio State's offensive line physically dominate Notre Dame, and Ohio State's passing game be the complement to that, that tells me that this is an evolved Ohio State team, because I already know that the passing game is going to be fine. I have no doubts that C.J. Stroud and those guys are going to figure it out whenever Jackson Smith and Jigba gets healthy. But
by the way, I understand that we understand he's dealing with a hamstring situation, and how quickly he can come back from that is going to be an interesting thing to watch. I don't know if I'd call that breaking news, but it'll be interesting because they have 2 weeks here where they could rest him if they want to. Whether that, in fact, is the prescription for that remains to be seen. But go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt your diatribe, your soliloquy here.
So yeah, Tim. I mean, and you said it best. You know, Jackson Smith and Jigba, if he needs to be out for a couple weeks, so be it. They're not going to have trouble with Arkansas State and Toledo. You know, I'm not going to pretend that they will. So this offense has its ways of beating you now.
You got to learn to be an actor. Go ahead now.
This offense has its way of beating you, and that's just the simple truth. And you know, I'll just say it now, I'll get it out of the way on Monday. I'm not sure I need to be an actor because the fans will tell me everything I need to know on Saturday. There's not going to be 106,000 people here. It's not going to be as rocking as it was. Even the Toledo game that's at night, it's not going to be like it was. And that tells you, you know, these fans know when to get rowdy. These fans know to get loud, and I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, what's funny for me is when they announced the Notre Dame game is going to be primetime season opener, everybody was fired up about it. Then when they announced also Toledo is going to be a primetime game, everybody's going, why are they playing Toledo at 7 o'clock at night? I mean, what's up with that? I mean, it's just funny how the fans, the fickleness of the fans floats back and forth. And what stood out to me the other night, like you're talking about, they did not get the aerial show they expected to see, the 106,000 plus in frenzied Ohio Stadium. But those fans were into that game from the beginning to the end. They kind of had to be, to really see what happened there, to stick around and see what happened there in the second half. And that just stood out to me from the standpoint of they wanted to see the defense rise to the occasion. First play out of the gate, wow, that was not the plan by Jim Knowles, etc. But then they held after that big play, they held them to a field goal. And then in the second, and later on, Notre Dame turns a player catching a ball, laying on his back into a field goal, touchdown, excuse me. And they take the halftime lead 10-7, and you're just kind of going, well, that's not what you expected. But you know what? Other than those two plays, as you pointed out late Saturday night, they shut this offense down. New starting quarterback, yeah. Little not anywhere near as multi-dimensional as Ohio State, yeah, but they shut them down. And in the second half, shut them out. I think the fans understood. They're savvy enough to understand what they just saw the other night. They saw a defense that is definitely greatly improved from a year ago, and right out of the gate. This isn't a 30 or 40% improvement. This looks like a 60 or 70% improvement as we speak. I think you agree, right?
Well, Tim, pat you on the back. I appreciate that segue. It's a perfect segue for me, actually. We're going to talk defense now. Yes.
I read it just like you wrote it.
60, 70%, I would agree with that. I don't think this is a finished product, though.
Oh, no.
There were times where guys were out of assignment, and athleticism made up for that. There were times where Tyler Buckner broke contain. Athleticism made up for that. There were times where Michael Mayer caught the ball, and instead of getting the 5 or 6 yards after the catch, you know, he's a guy that you depend on to get those 2 to 3 extra yards just based on how he falls down. No, that didn't happen.
Right.
And I don't know how bad this defense truly was last year, but I know every time a guy could have possibly fell 2 or 3 more yards, he was falling 2 or 3 more yards. That did not happen Saturday.
And there were breakaways last year, including in that Oregon game, which killed Ohio State. Mm-hmm. You saw some guys break through that first line the other night. I'm talking about from a running game standpoint, including Buckner. But by the time he was another 10 yards down the field, he was getting tackled sometimes by 3 guys. That was what was missing last year. There was it was almost a free-form kind of situation for the Ohio State defense at times against the better teams. I'm talking about Oregon and Michigan. When a guy broke contain, you know, that Oregon game was a great example. There was nobody there. And the discipline that the safeties played with right out of the gate, in my opinion, with a couple of 3 plays was outstanding. The pressure they brought from a defensive front standpoint throughout the game was outstanding, but especially the way it opened lanes occasionally for Tommy Eichenberg. From this time right now, this time a year ago until now, Tommy Eichenberg is probably the most improved defensive player in the country. That is not hyperbole. I mean, watch the video. He knows what he's doing, he knows where he's going, and he's trusting the guys around him to get after it in the same way. And that's just an example of how far this defense has come in 8 months.
So, Tim, I wanted to kind of take it a little further.
And that's just not just for me, but for my good buddy Jeff Snook and Matt Wilhelm and everybody else. Go ahead now.
So, I think I wanted to take this into a little bit of a different direction, because we're going to praise the defense a lot. I mean, a lot. Because what we saw Saturday night back here behind us in this 100-year-old building was more than impressive. I don't really know the word for it. But there's got to be an area where this defense can get better. Jim Knowles knows that area. It's a little more difficult for us to see. We don't have the all-22. We don't have, the full scouting report of, down and distance, guys in position, what play was supposed to be run, where they were supposed to be. If you had one area to critique this defense moving forward on where it should be, where it can go, where it could be, what is that one area?
Edge rushing. Thought that was JT Tuimoloau got good pressure the other night, but the edge rushers come. I expected maybe see Jack Sawyer flash a little bit more than he did, but a lot of times when he was in there in that Leo look, and he floated around that Leo look a lot. I was surprised maybe they used it more than I thought they would. But it is part and parcel to the Jim Knowles 4-2-5 defense that also features 3 safeties. Most of their get after the quarterback stuff came between the tackles, and basically came from Mike Hall and those defensive tackles, with the occasional blitz, whatever you want to call it, from the linebackers. But as I pointed out, Matt Wilhelm, I talked about that on my podcast this week. You can see that tomorrow. That was a lot to do, though, with containing Buckner, because Buckner came in reputed as a really good runner. He kind of flashed that a couple of times, but they didn't let him get loose. They didn't let him kill them with it, and that is one edge, though. I mean, so you want your ends keeping that in mind when they're rushing, etc. Against Arkansas State, I think you'll see a much more active end game from the Ohio State defense.
Well, and I think part of the reason why you saw Ohio State attack from the interior so much, not just the defensive line, they got home with 4 quite often, to be frank. But when they did bring pressure, it was on the inside, and I think that was because when Notre Dame decides it's missing not really decides, but when Notre Dame finds out it's missing an All-American potential guard, you attack the backup. And so, Jarrett Patterson didn't play in this game. That's not to say that Ohio State didn't play well in that interior, but Notre Dame was without.
Ohio State played great in the interior most of the night.
But Notre Dame was without one of its best offensive linemen.
Agreed.
It was without its best offensive lineman.
Yeah.
And so where do you attack? You attack the interior. If Ohio State wanted to, it probably could have sent some of that pressure with Jack Sawyer off the edge. But when you figure out that you're playing so well and getting that pressure from the inside, why give away?
Yeah.
Put on film.
But I'm just talking
about
going into the game. They had to have in mind Buckner and his ability to run, and you didn't want him breaking around the pocket and doing kinds of things. If he ran anywhere, you wanted him scrambling up the middle, which I think they pretty much did that job on Saturday night. But you're right too. I mean, Patterson was a former big-time center who moved to guard, and then he had to skip the game. Yeah, you take advantage where somebody's missing. Just like we're going to get into who ended up missing for Ohio State, Julian Fleming. Boom, your depth is already tested in that wide receiver room, and then you lose Jackson Smith and Jigba in the first half. He gets popped on the sidelines, and somehow or another, during that whole frenzy, the way he got popped, he supposedly suffered some kind of hamstring pull, strain, whatever you want to call it. And who ends up catching the go-ahead touchdown pass for the Ohio State University?
Yeah, Xavier Johnson. But I'm going to veer back. I hate to do it to you. I'm going to veer back to this defense because I want to keep talking about it.
I thought we had exhausted that.
No, I want to get to this wide receiver room because it's interesting, the depth moving forward. But I think we might just look at it two sides of the same coin here. I don't think Ohio State needed to bring pressure off the edge with Jack Sawyer. They could have. And Jim Knowles even said they kept it pretty basic so guys could fly around. If that means not bringing Jack Sawyer, but instead showing A-gap blitzes with Tommy Eichenberg, with Steele Chambers, with Cody Simon, then so be it. Because now...
that was the plan.
When you face Wisconsin, I don't really think you need it against Iowa because that offense is so bad. But when you face some of these better offenses that you're going to see on this schedule, you've got that. And the other team doesn't have it on film because you're not going to show it against Arkansas State. You're not going to show it against Toledo. You might not even have to show it with a run game like Wisconsin's when the passing game isn't really there for the
I think you show it when you get to show it because you know why? you want the next opponent having so much more to deal with than he did than the previous opponent. I'm talking about from a preparation standpoint. I think you show it when you can show it. I mean, that's the way I would go about it. That's the way a lot of teams go about it. But like I said, I don't think that was the plan anyway going into this game.
Yeah.
And then number two, you know, I wrote and talked about for like months, I thought the ability for this team to attack the A gaps opposed to a year ago was so heightened by the rise of Mike Hall. Teron Vincent, I think, is playing on another level now. I think he did the other night. And those defensive linemen, that was showcased in this game, in my opinion. It verified what you were talking about Mike Hall in the week leading up and through the preseason camp. And I heavily endorse that now. I think Mike Hall is a difference maker inside, just like Georgia had a few of those last year. That's what really makes you, as the season goes on, makes you feared by opposing offenses, is having a guy who can be in a quarterback's face in 3 steps. And whether he gets to him or not is not the case. It alters the play. Jim knows, and he swears by that approach, and along with his other stuff he does. So that's what stood out to me.
Yeah, I'm interested now with Mike Hall's rise. Teron Vincent playing really well.
You can tell I really mean it because I'm really using my hands.
Mike Hall's playing well. Teron Vincent played really well. I don't think the stats showed up for him, but he did play really well. I thought Ty Hamilton did all right when he was in there. I'm interested to see, Tim, I don't want to hijack the conversation and take it this way because we need to get to the offense, but I'm just interested to see where this leaves Tyleik Williams. I think he's a really talented player. I think he still struggled mightily against the run on Saturday night in one-on-ones when he's trying to shed blocks. He's still a good player against the pass, and I don't doubt his ability to get there against the run. But right now, if you need somebody in the middle to stop the run, it's not going to be Tyleik Williams. It's going to be Teron Vincent and Mike Hall. What do you have on the schedule coming up? A lot of teams that want to run the ball. And so, I'm just interested to see this defensive line rotation. I think it might get pared down a little bit, and we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But I'm not going to draw any conclusions from this game.
They
but
could
I'm just
use the next couple of games to get Tyleik Williams really going in that direction also.
Yeah.
I mean, that'll be interesting. But he's too much of a talent to just say, hey, go over there and sit down.
No, I agree with that, and that's why I'm just interested to see how this rotation works, because if Mike Hall's playing that well,
you're nitpicking. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, let's switch back. You wanted to talk about this receiver room. I want to talk about the receiver room. Everybody's curious. What's Julian Fleming up to? What's Jackson Smith and Jigba up to? Short answer is they're in the training room probably right now, honestly, getting their bodies
probably all night
for Wisconsin, because, again, Jackson Smith and Jigba does not need to play against Arkansas State no matter what. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I don't think, unless he's 100% ready to go, should play against Toledo. Julian Fleming's another story, kind of a surprise pop-up injury. And now this wide receiver room's thin. I know Xavier Johnson had a great catch. He's talented.
He had 2 great catches and a tackle on the kickoff return.
And no, I'm not going to say that he's not talented at all. That's not what I'm saying. I want to be very clear. I'm not saying Jaden Ballard is not talented. He's a very good player.
Yeah.
Those two are simply not Jackson Smith and Jigba and Julian Fleming,
but see, you can't
top end talent-wise. And so all I'm saying is this offense will be better if those two are on the field. It doesn't have to be better than it was.
But you can't pine. You can't. When you're a coach, man, you can't pine away for that, because you've got to use the guys that are available. You've got to have guys that are. To me, it was a compliment to Brian Hartline and to Ryan Day and the offensive staff that Jaden Ballard was ready to play in this game, and that Xavier Johnson was ready to play in this game, and at a high level. That was a high level. It would. I mean, forget about whether he just got his opportunity. He stepped up there. He saw the 2 safeties step up, just like C.J. Stroud did on that touchdown pass. He knew exactly where to go. He knew the post cut to take. He knew to get the defender on his backside to his right as he cut up on the inside, right to left, and boom, he's wide open, and C.J. Stroud hits him in stride. That means a guy has put in not only the work, but he's paid attention. And to me, Jackson Smith and Jigba could not play at that point, or at least they ruled him out at that point. And I know where you're going with this, but you can't spend your whole life, and I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about fans in general. You can't spend your whole life going, well, golly, you know what I mean? Because golly is going to be part of football.
Well, but that's why we're not the coaches, and we don't have to worry about that. I can say for certain that if with Jackson Smith and Jigba and with Julian Fleming, this offense is better.
But let me tell you this, if Jackson Smith and Jigba had been in that slot and run that route and been on the field, they might not have blitzed those 2 safeties, or they might have only blitzed 1. They figured that guy covering this guy they've never heard of, Xavier Johnson, could handle him. He could not.
And so all that is to say that you don't need the top of your depth chart at wide receiver, Jackson Smith and Jigba and Julian Fleming, because Julian was going to start in this game. You don't need those guys to, I mean, I guess you didn't need them to beat Notre Dame. You probably don't need them to beat Arkansas State, and you probably don't need them to beat Toledo, but at some point, those two guys are going to be needed. Can they get healthy? I think yes. I think Julian Fleming is more, ready to play, I guess, now.
Well, he was dealing with that shoulder, obviously, throughout camp, and even popped it out one time, popped it back in a scrimmage, went back in and caught 2 touchdown passes. That might not have been the best thing for him, you know what I mean, as you look back on it. But who was I talking about last week, in the last couple of weeks? I even wrote a story about last week. I'm whispering because I just, sometimes I get humble, you know what I mean? But I was talking about Emeka Egbuka. Emeka Egbuka led the team in receiving, I think, and had a touchdown catch, stepped up, gave them that first big play that really got them on the map offensively this season with that little catch and run, that little outward cut. That guy has big time written all over him. There's room because he's only wearing number 2, so you can write big time in the open spaces. But like I said, the depth of this receiver room was tested immediately this season, and in my opinion, they passed the grade.
So all of that is to say that I think Ohio State's offensive game plan took a hit when Jackson Smith and Jigba went down. Because when you plan on a defense bracketing a guy, when you plan on a defense double teaming a guy, when you plan on a defense having to mold everything it does to trying to stop the best receiver in college football, and he does not play 90% of your snaps, that does impact what you do offensively. It took Ohio State a couple quarters to get back into a groove of what they should do game plan wise, because they had to take that game plan, I would imagine, and throw it to the side and figure out something new.
You know what play though is haunting Ryan Day Saturday night, even after the 11-point runaway win. was a play just before halftime when you had trips to the right side, basically in a bunch formation, and Jackson Smith and Jigba was back on the field then, and this was after he'd gotten popped. He was back on the field then, and at the snap, 2 of the 3 receivers in the bunch were looking at the sideline when the snap happened. And when they finally realized the play had started, they went into their routes, and that was the play where C.J. Stroud, did he throw behind Emeka Egbuka, or did Emeka Egbuka not stop like he was supposed to? Who knows? The bottom line was that was an opportunity to really get a grip on that game right there. They failed and then missed the field goal attempt. So there are things they definitely need coming out of this game need to work on, but Jack Smith and Jigba was still on the field at that point. You follow my drift? I mean, there were still going to be some growing pains with this new group, even though the lion's share of them played in the Rose Bowl last year in that incredible comeback, come from behind win. In an opening game, just think, I thought they played defensively, with the exception, like you talked about, 2 plays really. They played, 3 plays really. They played extremely well right out of the gate. And I thought offensively in the second half, when they needed to show they were tough and physical and could run the ball again when they needed to run the ball, they sent that message. As you keep pointing out, the passing game is going to get there.
It's fine.
It's already there.
Yeah.
I mean, they just need to a little bit more grease here on some of the wheels, and they'll be fine.
So the lesson learned here is Ohio State's offense can be great without Jackson Smith and Jigba and Julian Fleming. It will be greater with those guys in the lineup. I imagine those guys will be in the lineup at some point, and this offense will be full go, steam ahead, with Trayvon Henderson and Maya Williams.
I think Cade Stover caught as many passes the other night as Jake Ballard did during his whole career at Ohio State from tight end, for example. They leaned on him a little bit. Marvin Harrison Jr. and C.J. Stroud seemed to be a little bit off kilter at times the other night, but Marvin Harrison Jr. made a couple of key catches in that game. You're exactly right. And then Mayan Williams, like I said earlier, I thought his greatest play on that last drive that mattered was running that wheel route, realizing CJ had scrambled and came back and made a great catch on the sideline right in front of the Notre Dame bench to keep that drive going, really to propel that drive. I mean, there are all kinds of plaudits there that when things broke down, they still found a way. And I think that should give everyone who's rooting for Ohio State definite confidence in where this thing could be going.
Yeah, because when they get those guys back, they'll be even better. And so
yeah, but you know who knows if you get them back. You got to bring along the guys you've got. That's the point I keep bringing up. You got to play with who you got, and I thought they did a good job in the fourth quarter, especially at playing with who they had.
So Saturday at noon, Ohio State at Arkansas State. That'll kick off.
Bush Jones led Arkansas State. You know who's coming back?
Brian Snead,
Brian Snead, who was run off from Ohio State back in 2019 by Ryan Day after he had to skip almost all of the 2018 season after a problem he was accused of. There was never a trial that was brought about it, but the what do you call it? The disciplinary board of Ohio State, in essence, did rule against him in a lot of ways, and Urban Meyer suspended him for the rest of that 2018 season. He transferred to a junior college. Then where did he go? That's right, Austin Peay. And then where did he go? Arkansas State. And now he's going to be back in Ohio Stadium.
So he was the second leading rusher for Arkansas State. So he'll be back in the Horseshoe.
James Blackman, a guy who started for 2 years at Florida State, is going to be their quarterback. Quarterback. He's had a weird journey to where he is. They've got some players. They benefited from the transfer portal this year, and we'll see where it gets them. But like you said earlier, Grambling State was not a good barometer.
No, and James Blackman was not good last year for Arkansas State. Went on a 2-10 team.
Well, Arkansas State was not very good.
No.
Period.
I don't think they're incrementally better. I think they're incrementally better, but I don't think they're a lot better. This is a game that Ohio State should be able to get those true freshmen in the game, get some reps. Whether that, get Kyle McCord in this game, get some reps. This is one of those games you have to come out, be good early, get C.J. Stroud off the field, and see what you've got with other guys. And
where Ohio State has decisive advantage is on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I'm talking about the lines. That's where this game will be taken over, I do believe, early by Ohio State.
So, I'm not going to make a score prediction on Monday because I do like
Me neither. I may not make score prediction anymore because I think they're kind of stupid. Because we looked at last week's game, we're going off, well, wait a minute, Vegas has got these guys as 59 points over/under. They've got Ohio State as a 17-point favorite, which dropped to 16 the day before the game. What do they know? So you're just kind of going, well, you know what? There's that feel-good situation coming out of that Rose Bowl that nothing can stop this offense. And that's not accurate. That was not accurate going into this game as it turns out to be. Ohio State still wins by 11, still wins by double figures, and a lot of people think they underachieved. I thought what they proved in the second half especially told me all I wanted to know about this Ohio State football team, both sides of the ball.
Well, I will counter that by saying Ohio State left 3 on the board with a missed field goal. It should have been 7. Meke Ibuka catches that pass, or C.J. Stroud puts it in front of him. That's probably a 7.
Ifs and buts.
I understand ifs and buts, Tim. I'm just telling you, Notre Dame got those 2 plays, and other than that, got completely shut down.
But nothing came easy for Ohio State the other night. That's what stands out. Nothing came easy, and they still figured out a way to finally just ground and pound. Even Marcus Freeman was saying they got on the other side after the game. He was saying we've got a good team. We've got to learn how to finish games. Well, that was what did we hear from Ryan Day after a couple of those games last year? Almost the same thing.
So all that is to say, the post-game win expectancy for Ohio State was 93.1%. They should have covered the spread in the Horseshoe and on Saturday night. I don't expect them to have any issues covering the spread against Arkansas State.
It's 45 points.
I'll go ahead and say give the points. I don't care.
Okay.
I think Arkansas State's bad. I think Ohio State is one of the best teams in the country. Temper my expectations when I feel like it, because I saw a good Ohio State.
It's your whim, man.
I saw a good Ohio State team physically dominate in the fourth quarter. A really good Notre Dame team.
Yes.
I'm going to give Notre Dame a lot of credit there. We're going to give Ohio State a lot of credit as well. We'll be back in the Horseshoe on Tuesday for Ryan Day's press conference. Make sure to check us out on the YouTube channel, subscribe there. Come hang out with us on the Lettermen Lounge message board. We're answering all subscriber questions there. That's Tim May. I'm Spencer Holbrook. That's the Horseshoe. Ohio State, Arkansas State at noon on Saturday. We'll see you guys there.